I just dropped the M word, menstruation. Menstruation isn't a bad word, it's not, but it's a taboo word in many parts of the world. Hi, my name is Prisha, I'm 15, and over the past couple of months, I've been researching into women's health. And I was shocked to find out that 131 million women are out of school every single year. And a major factor to this are periods. And that is unacceptable to me because periods are a natural bodily function. And I wanted to do something about this. So that is why I created a chatbot that uses natural language processing as a way for women to easily get answers on the most pressing questions they have. And a lot of the times they don't even know that a menstruation cycle exists. So in order to debunk stereotypes, allow women to feel more comfortable with themselves, I created this chatbot. I use natural language processing, which is a subset of AI, and it can be used in a lot of text-based applications. So for example, you have Google, you have Alexa. These are all examples that use natural language processing to communicate with us like humans. So when we do ask, let's say Google, able to do this is based on me asking Google a question and taking in those keywords from the question and giving me an answer based on that. Now let's do a walkthrough of the code and how I built this. Alright, so the first step to this entire process was having a file called intent.json. And basically what this file had, it had all the necessary data for our model. So basically there's this big thing called intent, and inside that intent there is a tag, pattern, and then responses. And there are many of those, so one here, and so on. And basically what this does is, so when the model is training, it uses things from the patterns and it pairs it with some of the responses and so on and so forth. And with enough training, you can actually get the proper response based on the patterns and the tags. Then what I did was I created a new file called nltk_utils.py. And basically what this file had was different, methods for each one of those functions. So tokenization, stemming, and bag of words. And basically what these three things mean is that tokenization is basically that you have a sentence. Let's say, when are you getting your period? That's one sentence. So what tokenization does is it basically breaks down that sentence into words. So when are you getting your period? They're like separate words, as in like characters. Same with punctuation. And then what stemming does, it brings those words into their base forms. So when are you getting your period? So if there are, let's say there are words inside of those words. For example, if the sentence had a word like woman, right? Woman has the word men in it. So it would break it down into the base, the most basic forms and the things that are in those words. And then what bag of words does is that it creates our sentence into an array. And that's what this function also does, is that it creates an array with zeros and ones based on the words that we have in our sentence, or our data. And it's important because that's used for the model, and it's used for training the model as well. A new file called train.py, and first what I did was I imported all the necessary things that I need, as well as in specific the functions and methods we created in our previous file. So the bag of words, the tokenization, as well as the stemming. And what we do here is we open up the JSON files as well, and we create empty lists for all the words, the tags, and then an XY list, which we further later use for creating training data. So what we do now is we associate those methods we created for the tokenization and stemming with the actual data. So for example here, we're saying for pattern in the intent. So the previous file we had, we're doing tokenization, we are adding words to our list as well as adding to our X and Y pair. After that, what I did was I ignored all the punctuation, so question marks, period, exclamation marks, and so forth, as well as removed any duplicates we had, and really just sorted and cleaned our data so that we don't have duplicates and mess up our result for our model. And after that, I created an empty list for the X train and the Y train, and that's just so that we can create the training data. And then I created a for loop, so for every pattern, sentence, and tag in the XY list that we had earlier, we're gonna implement the bag of words. We're gonna append that to our training data. And then we're gonna do the same thing with our Y train as well. And then what I did was I had the X train and the Y train and I put it into arrays. This label essentially helps us get A0, 1. And then over here, we're creating those into arrays. So zeros and 1 so that the model actually understands what we're saying to it. And then we determine the hyperparameters, so the epochs, the batch size, which are later used like in our model when we actually like create it. And basically these things like epoch, it's like how many times we're actually running, and so on and so forth. And then after that, what I did was I created a new class, and this was for our actual like to be able to use like PyTorch, which you could see over here. We imported some of those important things, and the reason why I created a new class was that so that we could iterate over and over on this, and that we don't need to change or like repeat from our previous code. And that is important so that we can get like the batch training. Here in specific, we are saying like if the torch.CUDA is available, like use that, or you're going to use the CPU. And then over here, I initialize the optimizer and the loss. And then here, we're actually training the model. So we're saying for epoch in range, the number of epochs. So we initialize that like up here. And for that like loop, we have another loop in that for loop that goes over the words and the labels from the train loader. And we're iterating over and over in that, and we're passing the loss. And it's a feed-forward neural network too, so it's that's that. And then here we're basically printing out the epoch as well as the loss, and at the end we're printing out the final loss. This was like every step, and this is like the final loss as a whole. And then here we're actually saving everything we created in the data. So this is actually from another file I created later on called model.py, and essentially it's taking everything we like created and it's putting it into like I guess one variable so that we can save it, and it's just easier to work with too. And then at the end we say once this training and the epochs are done, we print out that training is incomplete and the file is saved to this file. And then I also had another file called model.py. So over here when we where'd it go? Over here when we like say model size, input size and stuff, so that's actually part of this file too. So the neural network I used was a feed-forward neural network with 2 hidden layers, and this class base like creates that, and we have, you see these layers, and we say input size is the input, and then hidden size is kind of like the output. Hidden size for the next layer is the input, the other hidden size is the output, so on and so forth. And then what happens here is this is basically implementing the forward pass. So the parameters are self and x. So this first line is for the first like layer, and it has x. And then we implement the activation function. So that's the rel_u activation function. And then we have our second layer, and it gets output. And then we have our second activation function. And then we have our third layer, which has out as an output too. It's important to note that we don't have any activation functions after that third layer, and we also don't have softmax at the end. Be clear. So when we say here from model import neural net, that was the model that we created in this file. So it's basically like importing it, and in the train, it's actually using that as a way to train, and as well as over here when we say like model input, hidden, and output size, so it gets all of that, and he takes in the input size, hidden size, output size from the actual model we created in the previous file, and it's able to use that. And then what I did was I created a new file called chat.py, and essentially what I did with this file was implement the chat feature of our chatbot. So first what I did was I imported all the necessary like files and tools that we need to create the chat. This line we see if we can use the GPU or not. Then here we are opening up the intents.json file, so the original file over here. And then we have our other files as well, like the files we previously saved when creating the model and such. The files we had from actually creating our model, so right over here with the training. And then what I had was I initialized the important like characteristics like the input size, hidden size, output size, so on and so forth, so that we can actually push it like to the device as seen in this line, because that's what we're doing in this line. And then we're setting the model to evaluation mode. And then here we're actually like creating it more bot-like, if that makes sense. So the bot's name, I named it Sam, and basically it says let's chat, and then if the user types quit, it like stops and it comes out of that like loop. And then over here, what we're doing is we are taking what the person says and we're actually like tokenizing it and doing all the things we did right over here, like in the beginning, as well as right here, because before what we were doing is for the actual like responses, but this time it's the actual input. So after that is done, we start like the probability in terms of what the bot should respond. So if the probability in terms of the response being like accurate is greater than 0.75, they're going to respond. But if it's not, then the bot is going to say, I do not understand, because obviously we don't want to give a wrong answer to the person. And it obviously can happen, but the more training we do, and the better it will get. And that was essentially the walkthrough of the code. Periods are definitely something that has to stop being stigmatized so much. And I hope that this chatbot is one step closer to destigmatizing it, and also for women to get the answers to the most pressing questions they need, because a natural bodily function shouldn't stop women to attend school, get a quality education, be employed, be confident. I hope you enjoyed this video. Comment, like, share, and definitely connect on LinkedIn, Twitter, and hope to see you soon. Thank you.